It wasn't just another routine demonstration. The fluorescent lights of Central Metropolitan Hospital buzzed above us, casting an eerie glow over what should have been a normal outreach event in the pediatric ward. But beneath the surface level calm, chaos simmered literally and figuratively. For weeks, whispers about missing medications had rippled through the hospital corridors like wildfire, with opioids vanishing from locked cabinets and benzodiazepines disappearing without explanation. Nurses exchanged nervous glances. Administrators were on edge as media outlets began sniffing around for scandals. And now, here I was, Officer Blake Sanderson, standing beside my loyal partner Sniff, trying to bring some positivity into this stormy environment. Yet not everyone welcomed our presence. Some staff members shot disapproving looks at Sniff, muttering concerns under their breath. A police dog? In a hospital? One nurse whispered loud enough for me to hear. What if he scares the patients or disrupts the delicate balance we've worked so hard to maintain? Their doubts hung heavy in the air, but they weren't entirely unfounded. Hospitals are places of healing, not investigation, or so they thought. What none of them realized yet was that Smith wasn't there to disturb anything. He was there to uncover everything. Little did any of us know how much depended on his instincts, and how close we all were to discovering something far darker than misplaced pills. Each time Sniff positioned himself squarely in Dr. Hoffman's path, the tension in the corridor grew palpable, like a storm cloud hovering just above their heads. The bustling hospital staff paused mid-step, watching with bated breath as the large German shepherd stood firm, his alert eyes locked onto the doctor. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some dismissed it as mere coincidence or chalked it up to Sniff's supposed dislike for white coats, while others whispered about something darker at play. Maybe he has a personal vendetta, one nurse joked nervously to her colleague, though her trembling voice betrayed her attempt at levity. Or maybe he's trying to warn us. The air seemed to crackle with unease as Sanderson struggled to maintain control of the situation. Every instinct told him that Sniff wasn't acting out of malice. This was no random display of disobedience. Yet even Sanderson couldn't deny how bizarre it all felt. Why would his partner, trained to detect anomalies and threats, single out a respected cardiologist? As the murmurs grew louder, Dr. Hoffman appeared increasingly agitated, his polished demeanor beginning to crack under the weight of scrutiny. Then came the moment that turned mild confusion into outright chaos. On what felt like the third or fourth confrontation, Smith moved with such precision that Dr. Hoffman had no time to react. In an instant, the doctor swerved sharply to avoid colliding with the dog, but in doing so, he nearly crashed into a metal cart laden with delicate medical instruments. The crash echoed down the hallway as surgical tools clattered to the floor, sending nearby staff scrambling to contain the mess. For a brief second, panic overtook order. Nurses shouted instructions, patients looked on in alarm, and somewhere in the background, a child began to cry. Sanderson's heart pounded as he tightened his grip on Sniff's leash, trying desperately to regain composure. "Easy, boy," he murmured, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. He could feel the eyes of everyone around them boring into him, questioning not only Sniff's behavior, but also his own judgment. Was this really happening? Could his trusted partner be wrong? But amidst the chaos, something caught Sanderson's attention, a glint of fear in Dr. Hoffman's eyes. It was fleeting, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. Beneath the veneer of irritation and indignation lay something far more sinister: vulnerability. And then there was the way Hoffman's hands trembled ever so slightly as he bent down to retrieve a file folder from the ground. To anyone else, it might have seemed like an innocent gesture, but to Sanderson, who had spent years honing his observational skills, it was another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Whatever Sniff sensed, it wasn't paranoia, it was real. Something was terribly wrong here, and Sanderson knew they were running out of time to figure out exactly what. As Dr. Hoffman bent down to retrieve the scattered files, his hands betrayed him, trembling ever so slightly as they hovered over the papers. The air conditioning hummed softly in the background, yet beads of sweat glistened on his temples, catching Sanderson's sharp eye. It wasn't just the physical signs that set off alarms. It was the fleeting glance of panic that crossed Hoffman's face when he realized Sniff hadn't budged an inch. That momentary crack in his polished facade spoke volumes. And then, as if fate had conspired against him, a small slip of paper fluttered out from Hoffman's pocket and landed near Sanderson's feet. At first glance, it seemed innocuous, a scrap no larger than a business card, but something about the cryptic numbers scrawled across it made Sanderson's instincts flare. Hoffman froze for a fraction of a second before hastily shoving the paper back into his pocket, but it was too late. Sanderson had already memorized the sequence, B317 to 42. He didn't know what it meant yet, but he could feel its significance like a weight pressing down on him. The doctor's forced calm began to unravel further as Sanderson locked eyes with him. "Care to explain why you're carrying around coded notes?" Sanderson asked casually, though his tone carried an edge sharp enough to cut steel. When questioned about his frequent access to restricted areas, particularly the pharmacy storage room, Hoffman's demeanor shifted abruptly. His voice took on an authoritative timbre, dripping with condescension. "Officer, I am the chief of cardiology here. My work requires me to oversee medication protocols directly. If you have concerns about security clearances, perhaps you should address them with Administrator Park." But instead of intimidating Sanderson, this response only deepened his suspicion. Hoffman's attempt at dominance felt rehearsed, almost theatrical, and his overly rigid posture betrayed nerves rather than confidence. What struck Sanderson most was how Hoffman's eyes darted toward the nearest exit every few seconds, as though calculating escape routes. The man's breathing quickened imperceptibly, and his fingers twitched, an unconscious sign of stress that Sniff picked up on immediately. The German shepherd let out a low growl, his muscles coiled tight, ready to act. Hoffman flinched visibly, and Sanderson seized the opportunity to press harder. "You seem uneasy, Doctor. Is there something you're not telling us?" The tension in the corridor reached a breaking point. Nurses paused mid-step, pretending not to eavesdrop while blatantly staring. Even the rhythmic beeping of medical equipment seemed louder now, amplifying the unease. Hoffman's mask of professionalism slipped further, revealing cracks beneath the surface. For the first time, Sanderson allowed himself to entertain the possibility that this wasn't merely a misunderstanding, it was something far darker. As Sanderson reviewed the hospital's security footage, a chilling pattern emerged. Dr. Hoffman wasn't just an occasional visitor to restricted areas, he was practically haunting them. Night after night, the grainy black and white images revealed him lingering near the patient records storage room, his movements deliberate and furtive. On one particularly damning clip, Hoffman could be seen crouching beside a locked filing cabinet, holding what appeared to be a small electronic device. The gadget emitted a faint red glow as he manipulated it against the lock, a stark contrast to the sterile, clinical environment of the hospital. It was clear this wasn't curiosity or misplaced diligence. It was calculated intrusion. The discrepancies in medication logs only deepened Sanderson's unease. What had initially seemed like minor accounting errors now revealed themselves as systematic theft on a staggering scale. Hundreds of doses of opioids and benzodiazepines were missing enough to flood an entire neighborhood with addiction if distributed illicitly. The thought sent a shiver down Sanderson's spine. This wasn't negligence. It was premeditated exploitation of trust. And yet there was more. When Sanderson cross-referenced recent prescription orders, he uncovered something even more alarming. Hoffman had requested an urgent shipment of a rare cardiac drug called Ventralex, a medication so obscure that most cardiologists wouldn't have heard of it. The problem? Ventralex didn't exist in any pharmaceutical database tied to Central Metropolitan Hospital or anywhere else for that matter. To make matters worse, when Sanderson questioned Hoffman's direct superior, Dr. Patel, about their interactions, the answers were unsettlingly vague. He seemed competent enough, Dr. Patel admitted hesitantly. But now that you mention it, I can't recall specific conversations we've had over the past few months. She paused, her brow furrowing. Wait, he did ask me about expedited approval for some experimental treatments. At the time, I assumed it was standard protocol. Her voice trailed off, realization dawning across her face. Officer, should I be worried? Sanderson didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared at the screen showing Hoffman's shadowy figure moving through dimly lit corridors. Each frame felt like another piece of a puzzle clicking into place, revealing a portrait of deceit far darker than anyone had imagined. The man they knew as Dr. Hoffman wasn't merely stealing drugs or tampering with records. He was building a web of lies sophisticated enough to ensnare an entire hospital. Yet somehow, Sniff had seen through it all. As Sanderson glanced down at his loyal partner lying quietly by his feet, he couldn't help but marvel at the uncanny ability of animals to detect what humans overlooked. The deeper Sanderson dug, the more unsettling the picture became. Administrator Park's phone calls to Johns Hopkins, where Hoffman claimed to have completed his fellowship, had yielded nothing but silence. Not only did they have no record of a Theo Hoffman in their cardiology program during the years he listed, but when pressed further, administrators revealed that several staff members who should have overlapped with him were either unreachable or had no memory of such a person. It's like he never existed there, Park murmured, her voice trembling as she relayed this information to Sanderson. The chilling implication hung heavy in the air. If Hoffman wasn't who he said he was, then who or what was he? Things grew even darker when they tested the reference numbers on Hoffman's application. Each number led to temporary voicemail services, automated systems devoid of human warmth. Every attempt to connect resulted in the same cold, mechanical greeting. This mailbox is currently unavailable. Please try again later. It wasn't just suspicious, it was calculated, deliberate. Someone had gone to great lengths to ensure Hoffman's fabricated identity could withstand scrutiny, at least for a time. But Sniff hadn't been fooled, and now neither would anyone else. Then came the access logs. Security footage showed Hoffman entering restricted areas late at night, always alone, always methodical. What caught Sanderson's attention most was how long each visit lasted. While other department heads typically spend an average of 5 to 10 minutes retrieving medications or reviewing files, Hoffman's visits stretched far beyond that, sometimes up to 30 minutes. He moved slowly, pausing frequently, as though waiting for something or someone to signal it was safe to proceed. Was he communicating with an accomplice? Transferring stolen drugs? Or perhaps uploading sensitive patient data to an external server? As Sanderson reviewed the timestamps and cross-referenced them with inventory discrepancies, a horrifying realization dawned on him. Every extended visit coincided with unexplained shortages of opioids and benzodiazepines. The pattern was too consistent to ignore. And yet, despite all the evidence mounting against him, Hoffman still maintained his polished veneer, fooling everyone around him, or so he thought. Sanderson couldn't shake the image of Sniff blocking Hoffman's path earlier that day, his growl low and steady, as though warning them of danger they couldn't yet see. The pieces were falling into place, but the pressure was mounting. With every discovery, the stakes grew higher. If Hoffman truly was part of a larger criminal network, exposing him would mean dismantling an operation that spanned multiple hospitals and countless victims. And if they failed, Sanderson didn't want to think about the consequences. The tension reached its breaking point as Hoffman made his desperate bid for freedom. With Sniff closing in and Sanderson's voice cutting through the air like a blade, the imposter doctor realized his carefully constructed facade was crumbling. In a sudden burst of adrenaline, Hoffman pivoted sharply, attempting to dart past Sanderson toward the exit. But fate seemed determined to thwart him at every turn. As he lunged forward, he collided violently with a group of medical staff who were transporting sensitive equipment down the corridor. The collision sent a high-end ventilator crashing to the floor, its delicate components shattering into pieces. The sound echoed through the hallway like a gunshot, freezing everyone in place for a split second before chaos erupted. "Stop right there," Sanderson commanded, his voice firm but controlled. Yet Hoffman wasn't listening. Instead, Sniff sprang into action with precision that bordered on artistry. Rather than launching a direct attack, which might have risked injury to bystanders, the German Shepherd executed a flawless pivot, positioning himself squarely between Hoffman and the escape route. His body coiled tight, muscles rippling beneath his sleek coat, creating an impenetrable wall of fur and teeth. It was a move born from years of training, designed not just to intimidate, but to protect without causing harm. For a moment, time seemed to stand still as Hoffman stared down the dog, his eyes wide with panic. But then, in a shocking twist, Hoffman reached into his lab coat pocket and pulled out a small folding knife. The metallic glint caught the dim light of the service corridor, sending a ripple of fear through the crowd. "Back off," he snarled, brandishing the weapon with trembling hands. "I'm not going back." His voice cracked under the weight of desperation, revealing the man beneath the polished veneer a criminal cornered, willing to do whatever it took to survive. For the first time, even seasoned hospital staff members began to visibly tremble. Nurses clutched each other, their faces pale with terror. A young intern dropped her clipboard, the paper scattering across the floor like fallen leaves. Sanderson tightened his grip on his sidearm, his mind racing. He couldn't risk escalating the situation further, not with so many lives hanging in the balance. Yet Hoffman's erratic behavior left no room for negotiation. This was a man backed into a corner, dangerous and unpredictable. As the standoff continued, Sniff remained unwavering, his growl low and steady, a living barrier between Hoffman and freedom. And in that moment, it became clear the game was over. Hoffman had nowhere left to run. As the investigation unfolded, the true scale of Whitman's operation came into horrifying focus. It wasn't just about stealing medications worth $50,000 each week, though that alone was staggering, but something far more insidious. Whitman had been systematically harvesting patient data from the hospital's database, selling it to international crime syndicates, who used the information for everything from insurance fraud to illegal organ trafficking. Every keystroke he made left a trail of devastation, yet nothing could prepare them for what they discovered next. Hidden deep within his encrypted files were logs showing he'd altered medical records, not just to cover his tracks, but to manipulate diagnoses and treatments. Patients with comprehensive insurance plans were unknowingly becoming pawns in his scheme, their prescriptions inflated or falsified entirely. Some had received unnecessary procedures recommended by Dr. Hoffman, while others were denied critical care due to fabricated conditions. The revelation sent shockwaves through Central Metropolitan Hospital. Nurses scrambled to review recent cases, fearing how many lives might have been endangered by Whitman's manipulations. But perhaps the most chilling detail emerged when Sanderson received an urgent call from Special Agent Harlow late that night. "We found him," she said, her voice tight with urgency. The real Dr. Theo Hoffman had been located alive, but barely, in a remote cabin buried under layers of snow in western Maryland. When agents broke down the door, they found him unconscious on a freezing concrete floor, his body frail and unresponsive after months of heavy sedation. The temperature inside the cabin hovered dangerously close to hypothermic levels, and frostbite marked his extremities. It was clear this wasn't merely abduction, it was calculated torture, designed to keep him incapacitated while Whitman impersonated him. For Sanderson, standing outside the makeshift command center as details poured in, the weight of it all felt unbearable. This wasn't just theft. It was a betrayal so profound it shook the very foundation of trust in healthcare. And yet, amidst the chaos, one truth remained constant. Sniff had seen through every lie. While human systems failed, the dog's instincts had exposed a web of deceit spanning continents and endangering countless lives. The aftermath of the Hoffman-Whitman scandal rippled through Central Metropolitan Hospital like a seismic wave, leaving no corner untouched. It wasn't just about exposing one man's deception, it was about uncovering how close they had come to disaster. Whitman's operation had endangered not only the hospital's integrity, but also hundreds of patients whose lives depended on accurate diagnoses and treatments. If Sniff hadn't detected the subtle inconsistencies in Dr. Hoffman's behavior, Whitman might have continued his scheme indefinitely, potentially causing irreparable harm. The gravity of their discovery weighed heavily on Sanderson as he walked through the now bustling corridors, where staff members whispered among themselves, some still reeling from the shock. "It's terrifying," one nurse admitted to him during a debriefing session. "We trusted him completely. He could have killed someone without us even realizing it." What struck everyone most was the stark contrast between human systems and animal instincts. Despite rigorous verification protocols, background checks, keycard access logs, and electronic audits, Whitman had slipped through every safeguard like smoke through fingers. Yet Sniff, with his unparalleled ability to detect anomalies, had seen right through the facade. His training in anomaly detection, a skill honed over years, proved more reliable than any advanced security system or database algorithm. As Special Agent Harlow later explained during a joint briefing, technology can be manipulated. Biological markers cannot. A well-trained dog doesn't care about forged credentials or falsified histories. They react to what's real. This revelation sent chills down the spines of administrators and medical professionals alike, forcing them to reconsider how much trust they placed in modern safeguards. By the end of the week, Sanderson and Sniff had become household names within the hospital and beyond. Nurses brought flowers to the K-9 unit's temporary office setup, while doctors stopped Sanderson in hallways to thank him for saving countless lives. But fame came at a cost. Reporters camped outside the hospital gates, hungry for details. Headlines screamed phrases like, "Hero dog exposes medical fraud," and "How could this happen?" amplifying public scrutiny. Some criticized the hospital's leadership for failing to catch Whitman sooner, while others questioned whether relying on animals for security was practical long-term. Amidst the chaos, Sanderson remained steadfast, deflecting praise onto Sniff. "He did all the work," Sanderson told reporters humbly. "I'm just grateful we listened to him when it mattered most." For Sanderson, the experience reinforced an invaluable lesson. Sometimes, humanity's greatest tools are those that don't require technology. While hospitals scrambled to implement stricter measures, Sniff stood as a living testament to the power of instinct and loyalty. Together, he and Sanderson had not only saved lives, but reminded everyone of the irreplaceable bond between handler and partner, an alliance capable of overcoming even the darkest deceptions.